This is Radio Chatskill. I'm Tim Bruno. Little North is a farm-focused kitchen and market in Livingston Manor, New York. Owner Stacy Adimando said, quote, "I went into it thinking of this place as the farm market of your dreams," end quote. WJFF's Erin Shearer visited Little North for her segment, Eating Upstate.
Like our previous subject, Antonio Mora of Tiny's, Stacy Adimando relocated to the Catskills during the pandemic. Her new market, Little North, located in Livingston Manor, is the subject of today's Eating Upstate. Though it's only been open for a short time, it has already gained a reputation for its high-quality approach to rotisserie chicken. Here's Stacy detailing that unique approach.
I really just wanted to keep it as kind of wholesome and natural as possible. So first of all, we buy really good birds. We buy our birds from a local cooperative that only does, free-ranging, farm-raised birds with no antibiotics ever. They come beautifully, they arrive to us beautifully. We get them fresh every single week. So that is like number one. Just start with really good chicken. Then I keep it as simple as possible. I don't do any fancy stuff. I don't pre-brine the birds. I don't marinate them in anything. I really just salt them. We, try and let them salt as long as possible, maybe up to overnight if we're able to, but at least a couple of hours. And we use like a beautiful kind of French herb mix on them. And that's it. I don't, people ask me all the time, like, do you put butter under the skin or do you baste them while they roast or, do you brine them in liquid? And I don't do any of that. I really just let the birds and the rotisserie kind of, work together. That turning that happens naturally in the rotisserie means that the birds are kind of basted in their own juices and in their own like rendered fat as they cook. So adding extra fat always just seemed unnecessary. And I think really, they get like a nice kind of crispy golden skin because of the way that we pre-salt them. So, some of that extra moisture that might be on the skin is able to kind of like dissipate before they go into the rotisserie. So you just end up with like this really, really juicy, tender bird, and it stays juicy for a long time. That's the amazing thing. Even out of the rotisserie for a couple hours, like it still just seems to be just as good. And then, this great golden crispy skin with just like really simple seasoning. So people love it. And what I love is that like even families come in all the time and they're like, my kid actually ate this, like, because it's simple and it's kind of like, you can't not love it,
Stacy Adimando grew up as part of an Italian-American family in Connecticut. After graduating from Wake Forest University, she worked in the publishing industry in New York and San Francisco, working at and contributing to publications like Every Day with Rachel Ray and Food Network magazine. While working at these publications, she also put herself through culinary school at night. In 2016, Stacy was hired to run the test kitchen at Savoir magazine and was promoted to editor-in-chief a year and a half later. By 2019, she was starting to feel the weight of the downsizing of the publishing industry, and she stepped down from her position. The following year, with the onset of the pandemic and the birth of her child, she and her husband made a permanent relocation to the Catskills house they bought in 2018.
After that, I felt like, okay, publishing was kind of, downsizing and everything was getting really tight. Print was kind of hard to keep in business. And, I sort of was really glad I had gone to culinary school and gotten that experience in actual kitchens. I worked in some kitchens in Manhattan and worked in the test kitchens at the magazines, and I was just really glad I had that to fall back on. So it just kind of seemed like the obvious next thing to kind of go into a food business and try my hand at that. So we were part-time living in the Catskills for a while, starting in 2018. And then we were due to have our daughter right when the pandemic struck, and we just felt like it was so overwhelming to be in New York City, which was where we were splitting our time. And we just gave up our apartment there. And as of, the summer of 2020, we were up in the Catskills full time. So this seemed like the right place to do it.
With her relocation to the Catskills, Stacy began looking for spaces to draw on her culinary education and open a market. Eventually, she found an old contractor's garage on Old Route 17 in Livingston Manor.
As little buildings and storefronts opened up in different towns around us, we always went and looked, and I always had all these ideas based on what the building was. So, in some, it might have been an old bakery space and it felt like, okay, we should keep this as a bakery, or, in other spaces it seemed like more of a retail space. And so each time you kind of would morph the idea of what we could do here based on what the potential of the space seemed to hold. So for this one, Little North is housed in this really cute little red building, and it's surrounded by nature. All you see is views of trees and country road, and, there aren't a lot of other businesses like right on our street. So it just felt so kind of, country and rural and beautiful and natural. And to me, it just felt like it wanted to be a farm store. So never did I intend to open a farm store, but I just felt like, wow, this just wants to be that. I could imagine selling pies, made with local fruit, and, just featuring different salads and, vegetable dishes based on what the farmers in the area were growing. And it just felt so right.
Little North opened this past June. It carries sparkling waters that are hard to find in this part of the Catskills, plus provisions like olive oils, pastas, fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as canned tomatoes of various sizes.
But I wanted to kind of represent everything from, local American tomatoes and then like the best Italian tomatoes. So I have a range at the shop of, tomatoes. I have some that are like organic tomatoes grown in California. I have some Italian tomatoes that are like the San Marzano variety, which is a really famous type of tomato that's supposed to be the best tomato in sauce. So, all of them come in these nice big cans at a really reasonable price. You'd be surprised how far your money goes when you buy the big cans. We've got this one brand that's like the most popular brand in Italy. So it's kind of, I like to surprise people so that they come in the store and they're like, I've never seen this before. I really like this packaging, or where's this from? And that is probably the number one feedback that we get when people come into the shop, is that they say, I've never seen most of these brands before. Everything from our seltzer waters to our cheeses to our ice creams, people are like, wow, like, what is this stuff? It's new to me. So I love that. I love being able to introduce people to something different.
Little North sources from a variety of farms and creameries in the Catskills, Hudson Valley region, and other parts of the Northeast.
We source as locally as literally down the street from us. We work with a really cool young farmer who owns a farm called Somewhere in Time Farm, based here, literally like a few miles away from us down the street. We work with Willow Wisp Farm locally, and they have, tons of products from, vegetables, like in season right now is a lot of great greens like tatsoi and, broccoli rabe and spinach and kale. We have our, local farmers that we carry in our dry goods. So one of them is like Laurel and Ash Farm. They make phenomenal maple syrup that is based out of Holmes, New York in the Hudson Valley. And they actually use like wood fire to boil down the sap from their trees to make their maple syrup. So they're doing everything in like a super old school way, which I just really, really love. And then, just so many more. Everybody from we carry meats in our freezers from Hardwick Beef Farm. They're based in the Hudson Valley. Our ice cream selection is from this awesome farm called Arethusa, and they're like over the border in Connecticut, but really close to the Connecticut-New York border. And their stuff is just so rich and creamy and really, really good. And they have their own cows that, they source all their milk from for their ice cream. So it's a spectrum, and we try and cover, a lot of bases, in terms of like carrying local stuff, from our coffee beans to our, maple syrup and beyond.
With the onset of winter, Little North has added indoor seating. Stacy is also hoping to add some breakfast options and holiday treats.
I also think we're going to expand our breakfast offerings, because a lot of times people will come in and say, do you have any breakfast sandwiches, for example? I think we're going to add that this year just because it's so high in demand and people just really love that. We do currently have a fresh quiche that we cook on the weekends. It's also made from scratch and with whatever vegetables are like in season at the moment. But I think we're going to add some breakfast sandwiches too, and maybe up our pastries in the winter just to hit those notes. That's what people are craving. That's what they wake up on a Saturday morning and are like, oh, please, I need this to beat the cold and like get myself out of bed. So, I was hearing that and feeling it myself. So I think that's kind of our plan. And I also want to change a little bit of, the pastries and desserts we offer, as I always do as the seasons go. So, in addition to apple pastries and, we were doing a lot of pumpkin stuff in the fall, like I would love to add, homemade tiramisu in the winter. I think that's going to be super awesome around Christmas time. People are just going to love that as like a Christmas dinner or Christmas dessert option in addition to their Christmas cookies. We're going to do tons of Christmas cookies. I can't stop myself when it comes to good winter baked goods. So we'll definitely be scaling that stuff up too.
Beyond the holidays, Stacy hopes to expand Little North's catering operations.
It was really fun in the kind of wedding high season. We didn't do any weddings this year, but we did do a lot of like rehearsal dinners or the night before the rehearsal, when a lot of people's families arrived in town, they were like, we don't feel like cooking, but we have 20 people staying with us. Can we pick up a ton of chickens and sides? And, people called in advance. I would do like big antipasti boards for them and platters. Like we kind of do like a shrimp boil with potatoes and corn and potato salads and macaroni salads and all kinds of things for people for their summer events. So that was something that was really fun and successful and that I, definitely got excited about while the calls were coming in. We have one already scheduled for next summer. So people are starting to book us out in advance, which is really cool. And I think part of that, which I haven't done yet, but really would love to expand, is using our backyard for events ourselves. So we haven't, thrown any big parties yet, but we definitely want to with live music and, some kind of theme and make them seasonal and make them, maybe an annual thing. Also, our, backyard space is totally bookable for private events. So we've had a couple of kids' birthday parties out there, which are so fun because the backyard is contained with some really, nice white fencing. So it's on, a beautiful country road, but it's safe from the road. So the kids can like run around in the backyard on the green grass and get dirty and, climb on the picnic tables and whatnot. And mom and dad can have really good food and drink wine and beer. And, there's kind of something for everybody. So I think, doing more parties and catering and special events is something you want to do. And maybe even bringing some of that inside. We're thinking about doing ticketed dinners where it might be a special theme night, like, a night in Rome or a seafood feast or something where, you can buy a ticket in advance and come for a multiple course meal, maybe with wine pairings and, kind of have a nice intimate candlelit dinner feel. So there's lots in the works and we're so excited. I wish I could do it all from day one, but it's definitely, something that just comes with time. As you nail one thing, then you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next.
Little North is located at 430 Old Route 17 in Livingston Manor. I'm Erin Shear. Eating Upstate is a production of WJFF Radio Catskill.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, Dickens on the Delaware. This is Radio Chatskill.